This video will go over questions 1 through 5 on the Exam 1 review sheet. Question 1. Find the slopes of the lines that passes through the following points. All right, first thing we need to know, remember the letter that we use for slope is M. M represents slope. Okay, remember M is the rise, which is the change in Y, over the run, which is the change in X. We can also write that formula as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so when finding slope, I really encourage you to label your points first. So we have x1, y1, x2, and y2. Now all we have to do is go back and plug them into that formula. We have 8 minus 7 over 2 minus negative 3. All right, 8 minus 7, that's easy. That's 1. 2 minus negative 3, remember minus a negative is the same as saying plus. So that just reads 2 plus 3, which is 5. So the slope of our first line is 1/5. All right, the second one, same thing. Let's label x1, y1, x2, y2. Plug it into that formula and calculate your slope. We have 3 minus 9 over 12 minus 5. All right, 3 minus 9, that's negative 6. And 12 minus 5 is 7. So the slope of our second line is negative 6 over 7. All right, once again, we're labeling x1, y1, x2, y2. And we're plugging our numbers into the formula. We have negative 9 minus negative 9 over negative 3 minus 4. So once again, we have minus a negative, which we know reads as negative 9 plus 9. Okay, that's 0. Negative 3 minus 4, that's negative 7. And 0 divided by negative 7 is simply 0. Now, remember this, a slope of 0 is a horizontal line. Now, let's say this was flipped around and we had negative 7 in the numerator and 0 in the denominator. That would not be a 0 slope. That slope would be undefined. I have my students remember, if 0 is under the line, the slope is undefined. All right, before we do questions 2 and 3, let's review what slopes look like. We're always going to read our graph from left to right. So if you're reading from left to right and your line is rising, that's a positive slope. If you're reading from left to right and your graph is falling, that's a negative slope. If you have a horizontal line, that's what we just discussed. We know that that is a 0 slope. You guys, a 0 slope is going to have an equation that looks like y equals a constant number. So maybe it's y equals 3 or y equals negative 7. If we have a vertical line, that's going to be an undefined slope. And the equation of a line that has an undefined slope is going to be x equals some constant number. So maybe it's x equals 5 or x equals negative 8 or something like that. That'll give you an undefined slope. All right, the slope of a horizontal line, these should be so easy now, is 0. The slope of a vertical line is undefined. Before we can move on, we need to review parallel lines and perpendicular lines. Remember, parallel lines are two lines that will never intersect, and it's important to know that these two lines will always have the same slope. And remember, slope is the M. Perpendicular lines are going to be intersecting lines. And what's important about where they intersect is that they form a 90-degree angle. Now, the slopes of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. And in a second, I'm going to show you what that means. So for instance, let's say we had a line, and the slope of that line was 2 over 3. The opposite reciprocal, or the slope of the line perpendicular to that line, would be negative 3 over 2. So what we did is we flipped the fraction and we changed the sign. Let's do another example. Let's say we had a slope of negative 1/4. If we flip the fraction and we change the sign, we get that the perpendicular slope would be positive 4 over 1, which we don't actually have to write the 1 in the denominator. All right, the one that confuses people just a little bit is, let's say we have a 0 slope. That would be a horizontal line. So we know in order to make perpendicular lines, the other line would have to be vertical. So the slope that's perpendicular to 0 is an undefined slope. All right, question 4 reads, the slope of the line y equals 2. Well, let's graph that. We just talked about it, but maybe you forgot. So here's the graph, y equals 2. I plotted 2 on the y-axis, and now I'm drawing a horizontal line through that point. So the slope of this line, we can see it's horizontal, so we know this slope is 0. Therefore, the slope of a line parallel to that line, well, let's draw a line parallel to it, not intersecting. Okay, those two lines are both horizontal, so both of them have a slope of 0. Okay, remember, parallel lines have the same slope, so they both have to be 0. And the slope of the line perpendicular, so let's draw a perpendicular line. Remember, that means it has to form a 90-degree angle. That line is vertical, so we know that this slope would have to be undefined. This is an important one to know for the test. Number 5, determine the slopes of the following lines and classify the systems of equations as being parallel, which we talked about means the same slope, perpendicular, which we know means opposite reciprocal slopes, or neither. Now, before we start, let's go back over y equals mx plus b. Remember that slope-intercept form. Okay, remember that the m stands for the slope. That's always the coefficient of x. And b, that's our y-intercept. Now, to determine if it's parallel, perpendicular, or neither, we're really just looking at the slope, or the m. So let's look at the first line. Y equals 2x plus 8. Our slope is 2. And the second one, y equals 2x plus 6. Again, the slope is 2. The slopes are the same, which means these two lines are parallel. All right, the next one, we have x equals 4. And recall a few slides back, we said if we have x equals a number, that's going to be an undefined line. And then we have y equals 2, which we know is a 0 slope. So if we have an undefined slope, that's a vertical line, and a zero slope, which is a horizontal line, we know that those two lines are perpendicular. All right, the next one, we have y equals negative 1/3 x plus 6. There's our slope, negative 1/3. And we have y equals negative 1/3 x minus 12. Negative 1/3 is our slope again. The slopes are the same, so we know that these two lines are parallel. All right, next we have y equals 1/2 x plus 3. So our slope is 1/2. And we have y equals negative 1/2 x minus 2. Negative 1/2. Okay, we have a positive 1/2 and a negative 1/2. So they're definitely not parallel. Those slopes are not the same. Okay, the next question would be, are they perpendicular? Is 1/2 and negative 1/2 opposite reciprocals? So if we have 1/2, the opposite reciprocal to that would have to be negative 2 over 1. This says negative 1 over 2. So those are not opposite reciprocals. The lines are not perpendicular. So we're going to have to classify this system as being neither. All right, the last one. We have y equals 4. We know that that is a horizontal line, and we know horizontal lines have a slope of 0. And we have y equals 7, which is another horizontal line. So again, it has a slope of 0. Both have a slope of 0, which means the lines are parallel.